Question 1. Research into the effectiveness of automated threat correlation and response orchestration tools within a Cisco SecureX environment. A security professional is tasked with optimizing the incident response process. The goal is to reduce the mean time to detect, MTTD, and mean time to respond, MTTR, for advanced persistent threats, APT, without compromising the integrity of forensic data or introducing new attack vectors. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of process optimization in this context? Option A. Disabling all manual intervention points in the incident response process and relying solely on automated response actions triggered by any alert, regardless of its severity or confidence level, to achieve maximum speed. Option B. Focusing exclusively on increasing the processing power of the security infrastructure without re-evaluating the underlying incident response playbooks or alert correlation logic. Option C. Implementing a comprehensive, data-driven analysis of the existing incident response workflow, identifying key performance indicators, KPI, such as alert triage time and containment duration, and then iteratively refining automated playbooks within SecureX based on these metrics and post-incident reviews. Option D. Immediately deploying a broad range of new, unproven threat intelligence feeds directly into the SecureX platform to increase the volume of correlated alerts, assuming more data will inherently lead to faster detection. Correct answer is C. Implementing a comprehensive, data-driven analysis of the existing incident response workflow, identifying key performance indicators, KPI, such as alert triage time and containment duration, and then iteratively refining automated playbooks within SecureX based on these metrics and post-incident reviews. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security operations, balancing the need for rapid threat response with the requirement for thorough, auditable processes. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that, while immediate action is taken to mitigate a detected threat, the underlying process for handling such events remains efficient, compliant, and adaptable to future incidents. This requires a nuanced understanding of how to optimize workflows without compromising security posture or introducing new vulnerabilities. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it focuses on continuous improvement and data-driven decision-making. By analyzing the incident response lifecycle, identifying bottlenecks, and implementing targeted optimizations, security teams can reduce response times, minimize potential damage, and ensure that resources are used effectively. This aligns with the principles of proactive security management and operational excellence, which are implicitly encouraged by regulatory frameworks that mandate effective security controls and incident response capabilities. The emphasis on documentation and post-incident review ensures accountability and facilitates learning, which are critical for maintaining compliance and improving security posture over time. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over process integrity would be professionally unacceptable. For example, bypassing established incident triage or escalation procedures, even in a high-pressure situation, can lead to misdiagnosis of threats, missed critical indicators, or unauthorized actions that could have legal or operational repercussions. This failure to adhere to documented procedures can violate internal policies and potentially contravene regulatory requirements for due diligence and proper record keeping. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing a complex, untested automation solution without proper validation, poses significant risks. While automation can enhance efficiency, a poorly implemented solution could introduce new vulnerabilities, generate false positives that overwhelm security teams, or fail to address the actual threat effectively. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adequately assess the impact of changes on the overall security posture, which is a fundamental ethical and professional responsibility. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to incident response optimization. This includes 1. Defining clear objectives for optimization, e.g., reduced mean time to detect, reduced mean time to respond. 2. Mapping the current incident response process to identify all steps, roles, and tools involved. 3. Collecting data on the performance of each step, e.g., time taken, success rates, resource utilization. 4. Analyzing the data to pinpoint bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and areas for improvement. 5. Developing and prioritizing potential solutions, considering their impact on security, efficiency, and compliance. 6. Implementing chosen solutions in a controlled manner with thorough testing and validation. 7. Monitoring the impact of implemented changes and iterating as necessary. 8. Ensuring that all changes are documented and that lessons learned are incorporated into future processes. Question 2. The assessment process reveals that the current threat control solution deployment is experiencing significant delays in incident response due to manual log correlation and analysis. To address this, a security engineer proposes implementing an automated correlation engine and streamlining the alert triage workflow. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for process optimization with maintaining robust security and compliance? Option A. Implement the automated correlation engine and workflow changes immediately to expedite response times and address any potential compliance gaps or unforeseen issues in a subsequent review. Option B. Focus solely on reducing the number of alerts generated by the system to decrease the workload, without a detailed review of the impact on the completeness or accuracy of logged security events. Option C. Conduct a thorough analysis of current log sources and alert types to identify critical data points required for compliance and incident investigation. Develop a phased implementation plan for the automated engine, starting with less critical data, and include rigorous testing and validation at each stage, with rollback capabilities. Option D. Deploy the automated correlation engine without any formal change control process, relying on the engineer's expertise to ensure all necessary security functions remain operational. The correct answer is A. Implement the automated correlation engine and workflow changes immediately to expedite response times and address any potential compliance gaps or unforeseen issues in a subsequent review. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security operations, balancing the need for rapid threat response with the requirement for thorough, auditable processes. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the optimization of threat control solutions does not inadvertently compromise compliance, introduce new vulnerabilities, or lead to the exclusion of critical security events from logging and analysis. Careful judgment is required to identify improvements that enhance efficiency without sacrificing security posture or regulatory adherence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based methodology for process optimization. By focusing on identifying bottlenecks through performance metrics and user feedback, and then implementing changes with controlled testing and validation, it ensures that optimizations are effective, sustainable, and do not negatively impact the overall security posture or compliance requirements. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and risk management inherent in effective security operations. An incorrect approach that bypasses established change control and validation procedures introduces significant risk. This could lead to unintended consequences, such as disabling critical logging that is required for regulatory compliance or incident investigation. It also bypasses the opportunity for peer review and expert validation, increasing the likelihood of introducing new security gaps or operational inefficiencies. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for established security governance and audit trails, which are fundamental to maintaining a secure and compliant environment. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without considering the impact on data integrity or completeness is also professionally unacceptable. While rapid response is important, it must be built upon reliable data. If optimization leads to the exclusion or alteration of security event data, it undermines the ability to detect, investigate, and report on security incidents, directly contravening regulatory requirements for data retention and auditability. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes clearly defining the problem or area for optimization, gathering data and metrics to understand current performance, proposing specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, smart optimization strategies, conducting thorough risk assessments for each proposed change, implementing changes under controlled conditions with rollback plans, rigorously testing and validating the effectiveness of the changes, and documenting all steps and outcomes for audit purposes. This systematic process ensures that optimizations enhance security and efficiency while maintaining compliance and minimizing risk. Question 3. The control framework reveals a need to enhance the organization's ability to detect and respond to advanced persistent threats, apt, considering the organization's current risk tolerance, which of the following approaches best aligns with implementing effective threat control solutions? Option A. Implementing a basic firewall with default configurations and relying on endpoint antivirus software to handle all threat detection, as this represents the lowest initial cost and requires minimal operational overhead. Option B. Focusing solely on perimeter security measures and neglecting internal network monitoring, assuming that APTs will always originate from external sources. Option C. Deploying a next-generation intrusion prevention system, NGIPS, with advanced behavioral analysis capabilities, prioritizing its configuration to detect known APT indicators of compromise and suspicious network traffic patterns, and ensuring its integration with the security information and event management SIEM system for centralized logging and alerting. Option D. Purchasing the most feature-rich security appliance available on the market, regardless of specific threat intelligence or the organization's unique attack surface, to ensure maximum coverage. The correct answer is C. Deploying a next-generation intrusion prevention system, NGIPS, with advanced behavioral analysis capabilities, prioritizing its configuration to detect known APT indicators of compromise and suspicious network traffic patterns, and ensuring its integration with the security information and event management SIEM system for centralized logging and alerting. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity where the technical implementation of a security control must align with broader organizational risk appetite and compliance obligations. The difficulty lies in balancing the desire for robust threat mitigation with the practical constraints of resource allocation, operational impact, and adherence to established security policies. A failure to properly consider these factors can lead to ineffective security, compliance violations, or unnecessary operational friction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment that considers the specific threat landscape, the potential impact of a successful attack, and the organization's defined risk tolerance. This assessment should inform the selection and configuration of security controls, ensuring they are proportionate to the identified risks and align with the organization's overall security strategy and any applicable regulatory requirements. By prioritizing controls based on their effectiveness in mitigating high-priority risks and their alignment with compliance mandates, the organization can achieve a more secure and compliant posture efficiently. This aligns with best practices in risk management and security governance, ensuring that resources are directed towards the most critical vulnerabilities and threats. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to implement a security control solely based on vendor recommendations or industry best practices without a specific risk assessment. This can lead to overspending on controls that do not address the organization's unique threats or under-resourcing critical areas. It may also result in controls that are overly restrictive, impacting legitimate business operations without a commensurate security benefit, and potentially failing to meet specific regulatory requirements if those requirements are not explicitly considered. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings or ease of implementation over the actual security effectiveness of a control. This can result in the selection of weaker or less suitable controls, leaving the organization vulnerable to threats that could have been mitigated. Such a decision would represent a failure to uphold the duty of care in protecting organizational assets and data, and could lead to significant financial and reputational damage if a breach occurs. It also demonstrates a disregard for the principles of due diligence required by many regulatory frameworks. A third incorrect approach is to implement a control without considering its impact on existing business processes or user experience. This can lead to user resistance, workarounds that bypass the control, and ultimately, a reduction in overall security effectiveness. It also fails to consider the operational implications, which can be a significant factor in the successful and sustainable deployment of any security solution. From a compliance perspective, a control that is not effectively utilized due to operational friction may not be considered a valid mitigation by auditors. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the organization's business objectives and risk appetite. This is followed by a comprehensive threat and vulnerability assessment. Security control selection and implementation should then be driven by the findings of these assessments, with a clear justification for each control based on its ability to mitigate identified risks and meet compliance obligations. Regular review and adaptation of the control framework are essential to maintain effectiveness against evolving threats and changing business needs. This iterative process ensures that security investments are strategic, effective, and aligned with organizational goals. Question 4. Which approach would be most effective and professionally responsible for implementing a new Cisco firepower threat defense solution across a large enterprise network, considering potential impacts on network performance and user access? Option A. Immediately deploy the firepower threat defense solution to all network segments and users simultaneously to ensure uniform security coverage from the outset. Option B. Deploy the firepower threat defense solution in a pilot group of users and systems first, monitor performance and security effectiveness, and then incrementally roll out to the rest of the organization based on pilot results. Option C. Postpone the deployment of the firepower threat defense solution until all potential edge cases and theoretical issues have been fully identified and documented, even if it means delaying implementation for an extended period. Option D. Configure the firepower threat defense solution with the most aggressive threat detection policies possible across the entire network to maximize security, accepting potential performance impacts. Correct answer is B. Deploy the firepower threat defense solution in a pilot group of users and systems first, monitor performance and security effectiveness, and then incrementally roll out to the rest of the organization based on pilot results. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security implementation, balancing the need for robust threat control with the operational requirements and potential impact on user productivity. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant strategy for deploying a new threat control solution without causing undue disruption or violating established security policies and best practices. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that minimizes risk, maximizes efficacy, and aligns with organizational objectives. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, controlled deployment. This allows for thorough testing and validation in a limited environment before a full rollout. This methodology ensures that the threat control solution functions as intended, identifies and mitigates potential issues early, and minimizes the risk of widespread service disruption. It also allows for the collection of performance data and user feedback, which are crucial for refining the implementation and ensuring long-term success. This aligns with the principles of responsible technology deployment and risk management inherent in security frameworks. An incorrect approach that involves an immediate, organization-wide deployment without prior testing is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses critical validation steps, significantly increasing the risk of unforeseen technical problems, performance degradation, or even security vulnerabilities being introduced by the new solution. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential negative impacts on business operations, which can lead to significant financial losses and reputational damage. It also fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege and controlled change management, which are fundamental to secure IT practices. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the most aggressive threat detection settings without considering the impact on legitimate traffic, is also professionally unsound. While a strong security posture is vital, overly aggressive settings can lead to a high rate of false positives, blocking legitimate user activity and hindering productivity. This can create user frustration, increase the burden on IT support, and ultimately undermine the effectiveness of the security solution by encouraging users to find workarounds that may introduce new risks. It fails to strike a balance between security and usability, key consideration in effective threat control. Finally, an approach that delays deployment indefinitely due to a fear of potential issues, without a structured plan to address them, is also professionally deficient. While caution is warranted, complete inaction prevents the organization from benefiting from the enhanced security provided by the new solution. A professional approach involves identifying potential risks, developing mitigation strategies, and proceeding with a controlled implementation, rather than succumbing to paralysis by analysis. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, a clear understanding of the solution's capabilities and limitations, and a phased deployment strategy. This includes defining clear success criteria, establishing monitoring mechanisms, and having a rollback plan in place. Collaboration with stakeholders, including end users and IT operations teams, is also essential to ensure buy-in and address concerns proactively. Question 5. The review process indicates that during a recent security incident involving a customer database, the incident response team's initial actions focused solely on isolating the affected servers, without immediately documenting the forensic evidence or initiating the process for notifying affected customers and relevant U.S. regulatory bodies. Which of the following actions, if taken as the immediate next step, best aligns with U.S. data protection regulations and professional best practices for incident response? Option A. Begin the process of wiping and rebuilding the affected servers to ensure the integrity of the environment and prevent further unauthorized access. Option B. Focus on developing a comprehensive, long-term security enhancement plan before communicating any details about the incident to external parties. Option C. Immediately initiate the process of notifying all affected customers and relevant U.S. regulatory agencies, providing them with preliminary information about the incident and the steps being taken. Option D. Conduct a thorough forensic investigation to determine the exact nature and scope of the data breach, identify affected individuals, and document all findings for regulatory reporting and legal compliance. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough forensic investigation to determine the exact nature and scope of the data breach, identify affected individuals, and document all findings for regulatory reporting and legal compliance. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential gap in the organization's incident response plan concerning the handling of sensitive customer data during a security breach. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need to contain and remediate a security incident with the legal and ethical obligations to protect customer privacy. The pressure to resolve the incident quickly can lead to shortcuts that inadvertently violate data protection regulations. Correct approach, which involves isolating the affected systems, conducting a forensic investigation to understand the scope of the breach, and then notifying affected individuals and relevant authorities in accordance with U.S. data breach notification laws, such as those under HIPAA for healthcare data or state-specific laws for other personal information, represents best professional practice. This approach ensures that the organization acts responsibly, transparently, and in compliance with its legal obligations. It prioritizes the protection of individuals whose data has been compromised, minimizing potential harm and maintaining trust. Adhering to these regulations demonstrates a commitment to data privacy and security, which is crucial for long-term business reputation and legal standing. An incorrect approach that involves immediately wiping affected systems without a proper forensic analysis is professionally unacceptable. This action would constitute a regulatory failure under U.S. law because it prevents the determination of what data was compromised, who was affected, and the extent of the breach. This directly hinders the ability to provide accurate and timely notification to individuals and regulatory bodies, a key requirement of most data breach laws. Ethically, it shows a disregard for the rights of individuals whose data may have been exposed. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay notification to affected individuals until a complete, long-term remediation strategy is finalized, is also professionally unacceptable. U.S. data breach notification laws typically have strict timeframes for reporting. Delaying notification beyond these statutory limits constitutes a significant regulatory failure, potentially leading to fines and legal action. Ethically, this approach prioritizes the organization's convenience over the immediate need for individuals to take protective measures against potential identity theft or fraud. A third incorrect approach, which is to only notify internal stakeholders and not external affected parties or regulatory bodies, is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. U.S. data breach laws mandate notification to affected individuals, and in many cases, to state attorneys general or other designated regulatory agencies. Failing to do so violates these legal requirements and erodes public trust. It suggests a lack of transparency and accountability, which are fundamental ethical principles in handling security incidents. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response framework that includes clear roles and responsibilities, predefined communication protocols, and a thorough understanding of applicable U.S. data protection and breach notification laws. When a breach occurs, the immediate steps should focus on containment and assessment, followed by a swift and compliant notification process. Legal counsel and cybersecurity experts should be involved early to ensure all actions are legally sound and technically appropriate, prioritizing transparency and the protection of affected individuals, while adhering to regulatory timelines and requirements, is paramount. Question 6. The analysis reveals that implementing Cisco Secure Network Analytics for enhanced threat detection requires comprehensive network visibility. However, the organization operates under strict data privacy regulations that mandate minimizing the collection of personally identifiable information. Which approach best balances the need for effective threat intelligence with regulatory compliance? Option A. Implement Cisco Secure Network Analytics focusing on flow data and metadata analysis, employing anonymization techniques where feasible, and conducting a thorough legal review to ensure data collection aligns with privacy mandates before full deployment. Option B. Deploy Cisco Secure Network Analytics to capture and analyze all network traffic, including full packet capture, to ensure no threat is missed, and address privacy concerns through post-incident data sanitization. Option C. Install Cisco Secure Network Analytics with default configurations, granting broad access to all security personnel, and rely on internal policies to guide data handling practices without explicit legal consultation. Option D. Prioritize the security team's recommendations for maximum data collection to achieve the highest level of threat detection, deferring any privacy considerations until a formal complaint is received. The correct answer is B. Deploy Cisco Secure Network Analytics to capture and analyze all network traffic, including full packet capture, to ensure no threat is missed, and address privacy concerns through post-incident data sanitization. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security where the implementation of a new threat control solution, specifically Cisco Secure Network Analytics, formerly StealthWatch, must align with existing data privacy regulations. The core tension lies between the solution's need for comprehensive network visibility to detect threats and the legal/ethical obligations to protect sensitive user data. The professional challenge is to balance robust security posture with compliance, ensuring that data collection and analysis do not inadvertently violate privacy laws. This requires a nuanced understanding of both the technology's capabilities and the legal landscape governing data handling. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation that prioritizes data minimization and anonymization where possible, coupled with a thorough legal review. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and privacy by default, which are fundamental to data protection regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, if this were a U.S.-centric exam context, or equivalent principles under U.S. law. Specifically, focusing on metadata and flow data, and only collecting full packet capture when absolutely necessary and legally justified, demonstrates a commitment to collecting only the data required for threat detection. Implementing access controls and audit trails for the collected data further reinforces compliance by ensuring accountability and limiting exposure. This approach is best professional practice because it proactively addresses potential privacy violations, minimizes legal risk, and builds trust with stakeholders by demonstrating responsible data stewardship. It adheres to the spirit and letter of data protection laws by ensuring data is processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently, and that its collection is proportionate to the legitimate security objectives. Incorrect approach is analysis. Collecting all available network traffic without a clear justification or anonymization strategy is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks violating data privacy laws by indiscriminately capturing personal data, potentially including sensitive information, without a lawful basis or adequate safeguards. Demonstrates a lack of privacy by design and privacy by default, leading to potential legal penalties and reputational damage. Implementing the solution solely based on security team recommendations without consulting legal counsel or privacy officers represents another critical failure. This overlooks the legal complexities of data handling and privacy, potentially leading to noncompliance. Security objectives, while paramount, must operate within the bounds of applicable laws. This approach fails to ensure that the chosen security measures do not infringe upon individual privacy rights, which is a legal and ethical imperative. Deploying the solution with broad access privileges for all security analysts, without granular role-based access controls, is also professionally unacceptable. This increases the risk of unauthorized access, misuse, or accidental disclosure of sensitive data. Even if the data collection itself was initially justified, it violates principles of data security and accountability, making it difficult to track who accessed what data and when, which is crucial for compliance audits and incident response. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, compliance-first approach. This involves understanding the capabilities of the threat control solution and its data requirements, then mapping these against the specific data privacy regulations applicable to the organization's operating jurisdiction. A critical step is to engage legal and privacy stakeholders early in the planning process. This collaborative effort ensures that the technical implementation is designed to meet security objectives while adhering to legal mandates. Prioritizing data minimization, anonymization, and robust access controls from the outset is essential. Regular audits and reviews of the implemented solution's data handling practices should be conducted to ensure ongoing compliance and adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the organization faces a moderate threat landscape with specific vulnerabilities in its web application infrastructure. The Cisco Firepower Threat Defense (FTD) solution is being deployed to enhance threat control. The team has access to a wide array of threat intelligence feeds, including open source lists, commercial intelligence services, and vendor-specific feeds. Considering the need for effective threat mitigation without overwhelming security operations, which approach to integrating threat intelligence feeds into the FTD solution is most professionally sound. Option A. Focus on integrating only those threat intelligence feeds that are technically simplest to configure within the FTD, even if they do not directly address the most critical identified risks. Option B. Exclusively utilize open-source threat intelligence feeds to minimize costs, accepting that this may limit the depth and timeliness of threat information compared to commercial options. Option C. Prioritize and integrate threat intelligence feeds that are most relevant to the identified vulnerabilities and the organization's specific threat actors, implementing them in phases to allow for tuning and validation. Option D. Integrate all available threat intelligence feeds immediately to ensure the broadest possible coverage against all potential threats, regardless of immediate relevance or operational impact. The correct answer is C. Prioritize and integrate threat intelligence feeds that are most relevant to the identified vulnerabilities and the organization's specific threat actors, implementing them in phases to allow for tuning and validation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing security solutions where the technical capabilities of a chosen solution must align with the organization's specific risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for comprehensive threat detection with the practicalities of deployment, management, and the potential for false positives, all while adhering to the specific requirements of the 300-210 CCNP security. Implementing Cisco Threat Control Solutions exams implied jurisdiction, which, for the purpose of this exam, will assume aligns with general U.S. cybersecurity best practices and regulatory expectations, such as those found in NIST frameworks, without explicit mention of specific U.S. laws to maintain exam focus. The organization needs to make a strategic decision about the scope of threat intelligence integration, which has direct implications for resource allocation, operational efficiency, and the overall effectiveness of their threat control strategy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of threat intelligence feeds, prioritizing those that directly address the organization's most critical assets and identified threat vectors, as determined by the risk assessment. This aligns with best practices for implementing Cisco threat control solutions by ensuring that security investments are targeted and effective. It demonstrates professional judgment by acknowledging that not all threat intelligence is equally valuable or immediately actionable for every organization. This approach allows for iterative refinement, enabling the security team to validate the efficacy of each feed before committing to broader integration, thereby minimizing disruption and maximizing return on investment. It also supports compliance by allowing the organization to demonstrate a risk-based approach to security control implementation, focusing resources where they are most needed and can provide the greatest security benefit, which is a core tenet of many cybersecurity frameworks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing all available threat intelligence feeds without prior analysis or prioritization is professionally unacceptable because it represents a boil the ocean approach that is inefficient and likely to overwhelm security operations. This can lead to alert fatigue, making it difficult to identify genuine threats, and can incur significant costs for data processing and storage without a commensurate increase in security posture. Ethically, it fails to demonstrate responsible stewardship of organizational resources, deploying only open-source threat intelligence feeds while ignoring commercial or vendor-provided feeds, even if they offer more sophisticated or timely information, is also professionally flawed. This approach may be driven by cost-saving concerns, but can leave critical gaps in threat visibility, particularly against advanced persistent threats, apt, or zero-day exploits that are often first identified and shared through commercial intelligence channels. It risks failing to meet the organization's duty of care to protect its assets and data, focusing solely on threat intelligence feeds that are technically easiest to integrate, regardless of their relevance to the organization's specific threat landscape, is a failure of professional due diligence. This prioritizes convenience over effectiveness, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable to threats that are not covered by the chosen feeds. It demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and a failure to align security controls with business risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this scenario by first thoroughly understanding the organization's risk profile, critical assets, and regulatory compliance requirements. The risk assessment should guide the selection and prioritization of threat intelligence sources. A phased implementation, starting with the most relevant and impactful feeds, allows for validation and optimization. Continuous monitoring and evaluation of the threat intelligence program's effectiveness are crucial. This iterative process ensures that security investments are aligned with evolving threats and business needs, demonstrating a mature and risk-aware security posture. Question 8. Benchmark analysis indicates that the sales department requires a more streamlined method for sharing large, sensitive product specification documents with potential international clients to facilitate timely deal closures. The security team is concerned about potential intellectual property theft and compliance with data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best balances the sales department's operational needs with the organization's security and regulatory obligations? Option A. Deploy a broad DLP policy that blocks all outbound file transfers exceeding a certain size, regardless of content or recipient, to minimize any potential risk. Option B. Authorize the sales department to use their personal cloud storage accounts for sharing documents, with the understanding that they will manage their own security. Option C. Implement a granular data loss prevention (DLP) policy that allows for secure, encrypted sharing of approved document types to specific, pre-vetted external domains, with logging and auditing capabilities, after a collaborative risk assessment with the sales department. Option D. Prohibit all external sharing of product specification documents via email or cloud storage, directing the sales team to use physical media for all client communications. The correct answer is C. Implement a granular data loss prevention (DLP) policy that allows for secure, encrypted sharing of approved document types to specific, pre-vetted external domains, with logging and auditing capabilities, after a collaborative risk assessment with the sales department. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise security or the implementation of advanced threat control solutions, specifically focusing on data loss prevention (DLP), as per the 300-210 exam objectives, intersects with the operational needs of a sales department. The core challenge lies in balancing robust security controls designed to protect sensitive intellectual property with the legitimate business requirement of sales personnel to share information with external partners for deal closure. Missteps can lead to significant data breaches, regulatory penalties, and damage to business relationships. The pressure to enable sales while maintaining security necessitates a nuanced approach that considers both technical feasibility and business impact. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a collaborative effort between the security team and the sales department, underpinned by a clear understanding of the regulatory framework governing data protection and privacy relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. This approach prioritizes a risk-based assessment of the data being shared and the channels used. It involves defining granular DLP policies that allow for legitimate business activities while preventing unauthorized exfiltration of critical data. This might include implementing context-aware DLP rules that consider the sensitivity of the data, the recipient, and the communication method. Engaging stakeholders from the sales department ensures that the implemented controls are practical and do not unduly hinder their productivity. This aligns with best practices in security governance, emphasizing a partnership between security and business units to achieve shared objectives. The regulatory framework for this exam implies adherence to data protection principles that require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data and confidential information. This collaborative, risk-aware strategy directly addresses these requirements by ensuring that security measures are both effective and proportionate to the risks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing overly broad DLP policies that block all external file sharing without proper assessment is a regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the business necessity of sales operations and can lead to lost revenue and damaged partner relationships. From a regulatory perspective, while security is paramount, an organization must also demonstrate that its security measures are reasonable and do not create undue hardship or prevent legitimate business functions, provided those functions do not inherently increase risk beyond acceptable levels. Such an approach could be challenged as not being proportionate or as failing to consider the legitimate interests of the business and its partners. Another incorrect approach is to bypass the security team entirely and implement ad hoc file sharing solutions or rely on unmonitored personal cloud storage. This is a significant security and regulatory failure. It creates blind spots for the security team, making it impossible to monitor for data exfiltration or compliance with data protection regulations. This directly violates the principle of maintaining appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard data. It also exposes the organization to severe reputational and financial damage if a breach occurs through these unmanaged channels. Finally, a purely technical, top-down enforcement of security policies without any input or understanding of the sales team's workflow is also problematic. While technically sound, it fails to address the human element and the practical realities of the business. This can lead to workarounds and a general disregard for security policies, ultimately undermining their effectiveness. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the employee's ability to perform their jobs effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, collaborative approach. This involves understanding the data lifecycle, identifying critical assets, and assessing potential threats and vulnerabilities. Engaging with business stakeholders to understand their operational needs and constraints is crucial. Implementing security controls should be a joint effort, ensuring that policies are both effective and practical. Regular review and refinement of DLP policies based on evolving threats and business requirements are essential. Adherence to the relevant regulatory framework, which mandates data protection and reasonable security measures, should guide all decisions. Question 9. During the evaluation of a new intrusion prevention system, IPS, designed to enhance threat control, the security team is concerned about its potential to introduce significant network latency. The organization operates under a framework that emphasizes both robust security and uninterrupted business operations. Which deployment strategy best balances these competing priorities while adhering to professional security implementation standards? Option A. Implement the IPS in full inline blocking mode immediately across the entire network to ensure maximum threat protection from day one, accepting any performance degradation as a necessary trade-off. Option B. Deploy the IPS in monitoring-only mode initially to gather performance data and identify potential latency issues without impacting live traffic, followed by a phased rollout to a subset of traffic or network segments before full inline deployment. Option C. Prioritize the IPS's threat detection efficacy above all else, configuring it for maximum security inspection, and address any reported network performance issues reactively as they arise. Option D. Install the IPS only on a segment of the network that is known to be less critical, assuming that any performance impact will be contained and manageable. The correct answer is B. Deploy the IPS in monitoring-only mode initially to gather performance data and identify potential latency issues without impacting live traffic, followed by a phased rollout to a subset of traffic or network segments before full inline deployment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust threat detection and prevention with the operational realities of network performance and user experience. The security team is tasked with implementing a new intrusion prevention system, IPS, that promises enhanced threat control but carries a significant risk of introducing latency. The challenge lies in selecting an implementation strategy that maximizes security benefits while minimizing negative impacts, all within the constraints of available resources and potential business disruption. This requires a nuanced understanding of the technology, the network architecture, and the organization's risk tolerance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment strategy, starting with a monitoring-only mode. This aligns with best practices for implementing security solutions that can impact network performance. By initially deploying the IPS in a passive, logging-only capacity, the security team can gather crucial data on its performance and impact without disrupting live traffic. This allows for accurate baseline measurements of latency and packet loss under normal operating conditions. Subsequently, a controlled rollout to a subset of traffic or a less critical network segment, followed by gradual expansion, enables continuous validation and adjustment. This iterative process ensures that the IPS is effectively detecting threats and that any performance degradation is identified and mitigated before it affects the entire organization. This methodical approach minimizes risk, allows for informed decision-making, and demonstrates due diligence in protecting the network while maintaining operational continuity. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the IPS in full inline blocking mode from the outset, without prior monitoring or testing, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It disregards the principle of least privilege and introduces an unacceptable level of risk to business operations. If the IPS malfunctions or is misconfigured, it could lead to widespread network outages, violating the organization's duty to provide reliable services and potentially breaching service-level agreements. This approach also fails to adhere to a responsible security implementation lifecycle, which emphasizes testing and validation before full deployment. Deploying the IPS only on a segment of the network that is known to be less critical, without any initial monitoring or phased rollout to other segments, is also professionally unsound. While it attempts to limit the impact, it fails to provide a comprehensive understanding of the IPS's performance across the entire network infrastructure. This could lead to a false sense of security, as the IPS might perform differently on more critical segments, potentially missing threats or causing unforeseen issues. It also neglects the opportunity to gather data that could inform optimization for all network segments, focusing solely on the threat detection capabilities of the IPS, without considering its potential impact on network latency and throughput, demonstrates a failure to adopt a holistic security approach. Security is not just about detection. It's also about ensuring the availability and integrity of the network. Ignoring performance implications can lead to user dissatisfaction, reduced productivity, and potential business losses, which are all indirect security risks. This narrow focus can also lead to the selection of suboptimal configurations that prioritize detection over essential network functionality. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework that prioritizes a phased and iterative approach to implementing new security technologies. This framework involves 1. Assessment. Thoroughly understand the capabilities and potential impacts of the technology. 2. Planning. Develop a detailed deployment plan that includes monitoring, testing, and rollback procedures. 3. Phased implementation. Begin with a low-impact deployment, e.g., monitoring mode, and gradually increase the scope as confidence grows and performance is validated. 4. Continuous monitoring and tuning. Regularly assess performance metrics and threat detection efficacy, making adjustments as needed. 5. Documentation and communication. Maintain clear records of all changes and communicate effectively with stakeholders regarding the deployment status and any potential impacts. Question 10. The evaluation methodology shows that Cisco Firepower Threat Defense, FTD, has been selected as the preferred solution for enhancing threat control across the organization's network infrastructure. Given the urgency to deploy this solution to address emerging threats, which implementation strategy best balances security effectiveness, operational continuity, and professional responsibility. Option A. Prioritize the FTD solution's advanced feature set, deploying it immediately with minimal configuration adjustments to maximize its immediate threat detection capabilities, even if it causes some initial operational disruption. Option B. Initiate a phased rollout, beginning with a pilot deployment on a non-critical network segment to validate configuration, performance, and operational impact before proceeding with a full-scale implementation. Option C. Deploy the FTD solution across the entire network simultaneously to ensure immediate and uniform protection against all identified threats. Option D. Implement the FTD solution exclusively on the organization's most critical servers, assuming other network segments are of lower priority for threat mitigation. The correct answer is B. Initiate a phased rollout, beginning with a pilot deployment on a non-critical network segment to validate configuration, performance, and operational impact before proceeding with a full-scale implementation. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust threat control with the operational realities of a dynamic business environment. The challenge lies in making a decision that effectively mitigates risk without unduly hindering legitimate business operations or violating compliance mandates. The pressure to implement a solution quickly, coupled with potential resistance from other departments, requires a nuanced approach that considers technical efficacy, business impact, and regulatory adherence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy, starting with a pilot program on a non-critical segment of the network. This demonstrates best professional practice by allowing for thorough testing and validation of the Cisco Firepower Threat Defense (FTD) solution's effectiveness and impact on performance. It allows for the identification and remediation of any unforeseen issues in a controlled environment before a full-scale deployment. This approach aligns with the principle of least privilege and risk management, ensuring that the organization's critical assets are protected while minimizing disruption. From a regulatory perspective, this methodical approach supports due diligence in implementing security controls, which is often a requirement for compliance frameworks that mandate risk assessment and mitigation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the FTD solution across the entire network without prior testing or a pilot program represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adequately assess risk. This could lead to widespread operational disruption, potential data breaches due to misconfigurations, and non-compliance with regulations that require a structured and tested approach to security deployments. Deploying the FTD solution only on critical servers while leaving other segments unprotected is also a failure. It creates an uneven security posture, leaving the organization vulnerable to threats that may originate from less protected areas and pivot to critical systems. This selective implementation fails to provide comprehensive threat control and can be seen as a dereliction of duty in protecting the entire network infrastructure. Focusing solely on the technical capabilities of the FTD solution without considering its impact on user experience and business workflows is another failure. Security solutions must be integrated thoughtfully to ensure they do not become a barrier to productivity. A solution that is technically sound but operationally disruptive is ultimately ineffective and can lead to workarounds that bypass security controls, creating new vulnerabilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment, phased implementation, and continuous monitoring. This involves understanding the business context, identifying critical assets, evaluating potential threats, and selecting security solutions that are both effective and practical. A structured approach, including proof-of-concept testing and pilot deployments, is crucial for validating technical solutions and ensuring minimal disruption to operations. Collaboration with other departments is essential to gain buy-in and address concerns proactively. Regular review and adaptation of security strategies based on evolving threats and business needs are also paramount. Question 11. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent pattern of unusual outbound connections from a critical server hosting sensitive customer data, coinciding with a spike in CPU utilization on that same server. The security team needs to determine the most appropriate immediate course of action. Option A. Initiate a full network packet capture on the affected server and analyze the captured data for malicious payloads and command and control communication, while simultaneously reviewing server-side application logs for any unauthorized processes or configuration changes. Option B. Escalate the incident to the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, with a preliminary assessment that the server is likely compromised by a zero-day exploit, recommending immediate system-wide network segmentation. Option C. Alert the IT operations team to temporarily halt all non-essential services running on the affected server to reduce its attack surface, pending further investigation. Option D. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to prevent any potential data exfiltration or further compromise, and then begin a forensic investigation. Correct answer is A. Initiate a full network packet capture on the affected server and analyze the captured data for malicious payloads and command and control communication, while simultaneously reviewing server-side application logs for any unauthorized processes or configuration changes. Explanation: the monitoring system demonstrates a persistent pattern of anomalous network traffic originating from a specific internal subnet, exhibiting characteristics consistent with a potential advanced persistent threat, APT, lateral movement. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a rapid, yet thorough, assessment of a complex security event with potentially significant business impact. The pressure to respond quickly must be balanced against the need for accurate threat identification and containment to avoid unnecessary disruption or misallocation of resources. Primary regulatory framework governing this scenario within the context of the 300-210 CCNP Security Implementing Cisco Threat Control Solutions exam is the general expectation of due diligence and responsible information security practices, as often implicitly or explicitly required by data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR, if applicable to the hypothetical organization's data processing activities, or similar national data privacy laws. While the exam doesn't specify a single jurisdiction, the principles of risk management and incident response are universally applicable and often codified in organizational policies that align with broader regulatory expectations. The correct approach involves a systematic, evidence-based investigation that prioritizes threat validation before enacting broad containment measures. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that actions taken are proportionate to the identified risk. It involves correlating the anomalous traffic with known threat intelligence, analyzing endpoint logs for corroborating evidence of compromise, and understanding the business criticality of the affected systems. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of false positives and avoids disrupting legitimate business operations, thereby upholding the organization's duty of care and potentially avoiding regulatory scrutiny related to operational disruptions or data breaches stemming from an unverified incident. An incorrect approach that involves immediately isolating the entire subnet without further investigation is professionally unacceptable. This is because it fails to adhere to the principle of proportionality in incident response. Such an action could lead to significant business downtime, reputational damage, and potential contractual breaches with clients or partners, all of which could attract regulatory attention for failing to manage risks effectively. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the alerts due to a perceived low confidence score from the monitoring system without independent validation, represents a failure in due diligence. This could lead to a missed or delayed detection of a genuine threat, resulting in a significant security incident and potential data breach, which would be a clear violation of regulatory requirements for timely threat detection and response. A third incorrect approach, which is to immediately escalate to senior management with a definitive declaration of an APT without sufficient corroborating evidence, demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and can lead to panic and misinformed decision-making, potentially damaging trust and credibility. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes a phased incident response: detection and analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. In this scenario, the focus is on the detection and analysis phase. This involves leveraging threat intelligence, performing log analysis, and utilizing security tools to validate the threat. The decision to escalate or implement containment measures should be based on validated evidence, not assumptions. This structured approach ensures that responses are effective, efficient, and compliant with the implicit and explicit requirements of responsible cybersecurity management. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that an alert has been generated by Cisco Secure Network Analytics for a server exhibiting unusual outbound communication patterns to a newly registered domain, deviating significantly from its historical baseline. The security team needs to determine the appropriate response to mitigate potential threats while minimizing business disruption. Which of the following approaches best aligns with implementing effective threat control solutions? Option A. Immediately isolate the server from the network using Cisco Identity Services Engine (ISE) to prevent any further communication until a full forensic analysis can be completed. Option B. Rely on endpoint detection and response (EDR) agents on the server to detect and block any malicious activity, as network-level intervention is not the primary responsibility of network security. Option C. Initiate a detailed investigation using Cisco Secure Network Analytics to correlate the observed traffic with threat intelligence feeds, analyze the specific protocols and destinations, and understand the context of the communication before implementing any blocking or isolation measures. Option D. Block all outbound traffic from the server to any newly registered domains as a precautionary measure, as this is a common indicator of command and control activity. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the server from the network using Cisco Identity Services Engine (ISE) to prevent any further communication until a full forensic analysis can be completed. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security, balancing the need for robust threat control with the operational requirements of a business. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the principles of threat control solutions, specifically focusing on the Cisco Secure Network Analytics, formerly Cisco StealthWatch, capabilities, within the context of potential regulatory compliance without overstepping into areas that could disrupt legitimate business functions. The professional must make a judgment call based on the observed behavior, the potential risk, and the available tools, all while considering the implications of their actions. The difficulty arises from the ambiguity of unusual network traffic. It could be a genuine threat, a misconfiguration, or a legitimate but uncommon business process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation that leverages the advanced analytics of Cisco Secure Network Analytics to understand the context of the unusual traffic. This includes examining the source and destination, the protocols used, the volume of data, and the temporal patterns. By correlating this information with known threat intelligence and baseline network behavior, the security professional can accurately assess the risk. If the analysis confirms a high probability of malicious activity, then escalating to implement specific threat control measures, such as applying access control lists, ACL, or initiating host isolation through Cisco Identity Services Engine (ISE) integration, is the best professional practice. This approach is justified by the principle of least privilege and the need for evidence-based decision-making in security operations, aligning with the proactive threat mitigation strategies emphasized in the CCNP Security Implementing Cisco Threat Control Solutions curriculum. It ensures that actions taken are proportionate to the identified risk and are supported by data, minimizing the chance of false positives and unnecessary disruption. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing immediate, broad network segmentation or blocking based solely on the initial alert without further investigation is an incorrect approach. This is because it risks disrupting critical business operations based on potentially incomplete or misinterpreted data. Such an action could lead to significant financial losses or reputational damage if the traffic is later determined to be legitimate. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the potential impact on the organization's core functions. Disregarding the alert entirely because the traffic is not immediately identifiable as a known malware signature is also an incorrect approach. This failure to investigate unusual behavior, even if not matching a specific signature, ignores the evolving nature of threats and the potential for zero-day exploits or sophisticated reconnaissance activities. It violates the principle of proactive security and could leave the organization vulnerable to advanced persistent threats. Manually attempting to trace the traffic using basic ping and traceroute commands without leveraging the advanced analytics of Cisco Secure Network Analytics is inefficient and likely insufficient. While these tools can provide basic connectivity information, they lack the depth of behavioral analysis, threat intelligence correlation, and contextual understanding that Cisco Secure Network Analytics offers. This approach is professionally suboptimal as it fails to utilize the most effective tools available for threat detection and analysis, potentially leading to missed threats or prolonged investigation times. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes data-driven analysis and risk assessment. This involves 1. Alert triage, initial assessment of the alert's severity and potential impact. 2. Deep dive analysis, utilizing specialized tools like Cisco Secure Network Analytics to gather comprehensive context about the observed behavior. This includes understanding network flows, user activity, and deviations from normal patterns. 3. Threat intelligence correlation, cross-referencing observed activity with known threat indicators and actor tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTP. 4. Risk assessment, quantifying the likelihood and impact of the potential threat. 5. Action planning, developing a response strategy that is proportionate to the assessed risk, considering both security effectiveness and operational impact. This might involve containment, eradication, or further investigation. 6. Documentation and review, recording all actions taken and the rationale behind them for future reference and continuous improvement. Question 13. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical zero-day vulnerability has been publicly disclosed, affecting a core network service used across the organization's US-based operations. The security team has obtained a patch from the vendor, but deploying it immediately to all production systems carries a significant risk of service disruption due to the complexity of the environment and the critical nature of the service. Given the organization's adherence to US regulatory frameworks, including NIST guidelines for vulnerability management, which of the following approaches best balances the need for immediate security with operational stability and compliance? Option A. Implement a phased rollout of the patch, beginning with a pilot group of non-critical systems, followed by a controlled deployment to critical systems after successful validation, with interim mitigation measures applied to critical systems where feasible. Option B. Deploy the patch only to systems that are not considered critical infrastructure, leaving core operational systems unprotected until a more opportune time. Option C. Immediately deploy the patch to all production systems across the organization to ensure all systems are protected against the zero-day threat as quickly as possible. Option D. Delay the deployment of the patch until the next scheduled maintenance window, which is several weeks away, to minimize any potential disruption to business operations. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased rollout of the patch, beginning with a pilot group of non-critical systems, followed by a controlled deployment to critical systems after successful validation, with interim mitigation measures applied to critical systems where feasible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security where a newly discovered vulnerability requires immediate action, but the organization operates under strict US regulatory frameworks, specifically those related to data protection and incident response, such as HIPAA and NIST guidelines. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching a critical vulnerability with the need to maintain operational continuity and avoid introducing new risks through hasty implementation. The potential for service disruption, data compromise, or non-compliance with regulatory mandates makes careful judgment paramount. The decision-maker must consider the technical implications of the patch, the potential impact on business operations, and the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased and risk-based deployment strategy. This aligns with best practices recommended by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for vulnerability management and incident response, which are foundational to US regulatory compliance. Specifically, NIST SB 800-53 and NIST SB 800-61 provide guidance on assessing, prioritizing, and mitigating security risks. A phased approach allows for thorough testing in a controlled environment before full deployment, minimizing the risk of unintended consequences. This demonstrates due diligence, a key ethical and legal principle in data security. By prioritizing systems based on their criticality and the potential impact of the vulnerability, the organization ensures that the most sensitive and critical assets are protected first, fulfilling its duty of care under regulations like HIPAA for protected health information. This methodical process also supports auditability and provides a clear record of actions taken, which is crucial for demonstrating compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the patch immediately across all production systems without prior testing is a direct violation of sound risk management principles and can lead to significant operational failures. This hasty action could disrupt critical services, potentially leading to financial losses and reputational damage. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility to ensure the integrity and availability of systems, especially those handling sensitive data. From a regulatory standpoint, such an approach could be seen as reckless, failing to meet the standard of care expected under U.S. cybersecurity regulations. Delaying the patch indefinitely until a less disruptive time, without any interim mitigation, is also a failure. This inaction leaves systems vulnerable to exploitation, directly contravening the proactive security measures mandated by regulations. Organizations have a legal and ethical obligation to address known vulnerabilities in a timely manner. Failing to do so, especially for critical vulnerabilities, can result in severe penalties if a breach occurs, as it demonstrates a lack of reasonable security practices. Deploying the patch only to non-critical systems while leaving critical systems exposed is an incomplete and potentially dangerous strategy. While it might seem like a compromise, it leaves the most valuable assets unprotected. This selective patching fails to address the overall risk posture of the organization and could lead to a breach of critical data, resulting in significant regulatory fines and legal liabilities under U.S. data protection laws. It also demonstrates a failure to prioritize security based on risk, which is a fundamental requirement for compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment and mitigation. This framework typically involves 1. Vulnerability assessment, thoroughly understanding the nature and severity of the vulnerability. 2. Impact analysis, determining the potential business and operational impact of exploitation. 3. Risk prioritization, ranking systems and data based on criticality and exposure. 4. Mitigation strategy development, outlining a plan for patching, including testing, phased deployment, and rollback procedures. 5. Communication, informing relevant stakeholders about the vulnerability and the mitigation plan. 6. Implementation and verification, executing the plan and confirming the patch's effectiveness and stability. 7. Monitoring and review, continuously monitoring systems for any adverse effects and reviewing the process for future improvements. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both technical best practices and regulatory requirements. Question 14. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the Cisco Firepower Threat Defense (FTD) system is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting network traffic inspection and security policy enforcement. The operations team is under pressure to restore full functionality immediately. Which of the following approaches represents the most professional and compliant method for addressing this issue? Option A. Focus exclusively on external network factors, such as upstream bandwidth utilization, and recommend an increase in network capacity without investigating the FTD's internal health. Option B. Immediately implement a broad, untested configuration change across multiple FTD modules, hoping to resolve the issue through trial and error. Option C. Revert the FTD to its last known good configuration without analyzing the current system state or the nature of the performance degradation. Option D. Initiate a deep dive into the FTD's internal performance metrics, logs, and diagnostic outputs to identify the specific processes or configurations causing the degradation, and then plan a targeted remediation based on these findings. Correct answer is D. Initiate a deep dive into the FTD's internal performance metrics, logs, and diagnostic outputs to identify the specific processes or configurations causing the degradation, and then plan a targeted remediation based on these findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity where a critical security control, the Cisco Firepower Threat Defense (FTD) system, is experiencing intermittent performance degradation. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to restore full functionality and mitigate potential security risks with the requirement to adhere to established change management processes and avoid introducing further instability. Stakeholder pressure for a quick resolution can lead to rushed decisions, bypassing necessary validation steps, and potentially violating operational procedures or even regulatory compliance if not handled meticulously. The complexity of FTD, with its integrated security services, means that even seemingly minor configuration changes can have cascading effects. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation that prioritizes understanding the root cause before implementing any changes. This aligns with best practices for incident response and change management, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data security and operational resilience. Specifically, this approach emphasizes leveraging the FTD's built-in diagnostic tools and logs to pinpoint the source of the performance issue. This methodical process ensures that any subsequent remediation actions are targeted, effective, and have a lower risk of introducing new problems. It also provides auditable evidence of due diligence, crucial for compliance and post-incident reviews. This aligns with the principles of maintaining a secure and operational environment, a core tenet of cybersecurity regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, untested configuration change without a clear understanding of the root cause is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach risks exacerbating the problem, potentially leading to a complete system outage and a breach of security controls. This bypasses the principle of least privilege and controlled change, which are fundamental to maintaining system integrity and compliance with security standards. It also fails to provide the necessary audit trail for troubleshooting and remediation, which is a common requirement in many data protection regulations. Reverting to a previous, known good configuration without thorough analysis of the current state and the nature of the degradation is also problematic. While seemingly a safe option, it might mask an underlying issue that will re-emerge, or it could inadvertently revert critical security policies that were implemented since the last known good state. This approach lacks the proactive and analytical rigor expected in a security operations environment and can lead to compliance gaps if the reverted configuration is less secure. Focusing solely on external factors like network bandwidth without investigating the FTD's internal performance metrics is an incomplete diagnostic approach. While external factors can contribute, the problem is reported as FTD performance degradation, necessitating an internal investigation first. This narrow focus can lead to misallocation of resources and failure to address the actual cause, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable and non-compliant with its own security policies and any applicable regulations that mandate effective threat control. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response and change management framework. This involves 1. Incident identification and scoping. Clearly define the problem and its impact. 2. Data collection and analysis. Gather all relevant logs, performance metrics, and configuration data from the FTD. 3. Root cause analysis. Systematically analyze the collected data to determine the underlying cause of the performance degradation. 4. Solution development. Propose targeted solutions based on the root cause. 5. Change management. Follow established procedures for testing, approving, and implementing changes, including rollback plans. 6. Verification and monitoring. Confirm the issue is resolved and monitor the system for recurrence. This iterative, evidence-based approach ensures security, compliance, and operational stability. Question 15. Implementation of a new threat intelligence feed into a Cisco SecureX environment requires careful consideration of its impact on existing security controls, including Cisco Firepower Threat Defense, FTD, and Cisco Secure Network Analytics. Which approach best ensures a secure and effective integration while minimizing operational disruption? Option A. Implement the threat intelligence feed only on a limited number of critical servers to observe its initial performance before broader deployment. Option B. Integrate the threat intelligence feed without any prior testing, assuming that the data is inherently accurate and will automatically enhance existing security policies. Option C. Deploy the threat intelligence feed directly into the production environment to immediately benefit from the latest threat data across all security devices. Option D. Conduct a pilot program with the new feed integrated into a staging environment, followed by a phased rollout to production with continuous monitoring and performance analysis. Correct answer is D. Conduct a pilot program with the new feed integrated into a staging environment, followed by a phased rollout to production with continuous monitoring and performance analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing the need for robust threat detection with the operational realities of a business. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of a new threat intelligence feed on existing security controls and business processes. Without a thorough impact assessment, implementing the feed could lead to significant disruptions, false positives, or even a reduction in overall security posture due to misconfiguration or resource overload. Professional judgment is required to prioritize risks, understand dependencies, and ensure that the implementation aligns with organizational objectives and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy that includes a pilot program and continuous monitoring. This aligns with best practices for managing change in complex IT environments. Specifically, it allows for the validation of the threat intelligence feed's effectiveness and accuracy in a controlled setting before full deployment. This minimizes the risk of widespread disruption and ensures that the feed integrates seamlessly with existing security tools like the Cisco Firepower Threat Defense, FTD, and Cisco Secure Network Analytics, formerly Cisco StealthWatch. Regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data integrity and incident response, is better maintained when changes are managed systematically, allowing for audit trails and documented validation. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to a secure and stable operational environment, which is implicitly expected under general cybersecurity frameworks that emphasize risk management and operational resilience. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the threat intelligence feed directly into the production environment without prior testing or a pilot phase is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential operational impacts, which could lead to service disruptions and security vulnerabilities. This approach violates the principle of least privilege and controlled change management, often implicitly or explicitly required by cybersecurity regulations that mandate risk assessment before deploying new technologies or making significant system modifications. Deploying the feed only to a subset of the network without a clear plan for scaling or integration with other security components is also problematic. This creates an incomplete security posture and potential blind spots. It fails to provide a comprehensive view of threats and can lead to inconsistent policy enforcement, which is a failure in maintaining a uniform security standard across the organization. This can have regulatory implications if certain segments of the network are subject to specific compliance requirements that are not being met due to this partial implementation. Ignoring the potential for false positives and focusing solely on the volume of new threat indicators is a critical error. This can lead to alert fatigue for security analysts, causing them to miss genuine threats. It also represents a failure to properly tune security systems, which is a fundamental aspect of effective threat management. From a regulatory perspective, an inability to effectively manage and respond to security incidents due to overwhelming false positives can be seen as a failure to implement reasonable security measures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach the implementation of new security tools and data sources with a structured methodology. This begins with a thorough understanding of the potential benefits and risks. A risk-based approach is paramount, where the potential impact of the new feed on existing infrastructure, operational processes, and compliance requirements is meticulously evaluated. This involves engaging relevant stakeholders, including security operations, IT infrastructure, and compliance teams. The decision-making process should prioritize a phased rollout, starting with a controlled pilot to validate effectiveness and identify potential issues. Continuous monitoring and feedback loops are essential to ensure ongoing efficacy and to adapt to evolving threat landscapes and organizational needs. This systematic approach ensures that security enhancements are implemented responsibly, minimizing disruption and maximizing their intended benefit while adhering to professional standards and regulatory expectations. Question 16. The audit findings indicate that the organization's incident response plan lacks a clearly defined process for quantifying the potential business disruption and regulatory compliance risks associated with a security breach, leading to ad hoc decision-making during recent events. Which of the following approaches best addresses this deficiency in the impact assessment phase? Option A. Relying on the subjective judgment of the incident response team lead to estimate the potential business impact based on their experience. Option B. Deferring the detailed impact assessment until all immediate containment and eradication activities are fully completed. Option C. implementing a standardized impact assessment framework that categorizes potential consequences across operational, financial, legal, and reputational domains, and requires documented evidence for each assessment. Option D, focusing solely on the technical severity of the exploit and the number of affected systems to determine the priority of remediation efforts. Correct answer is C, implementing a standardized impact assessment framework that categorizes potential consequences across operational, financial, legal, and reputational domains, and requires documented evidence for each assessment. Explanation: the audit findings indicate a potential gap in the organization's incident response capabilities, specifically concerning the impact assessment phase. This scenario is professionally challenging because a thorough impact assessment is crucial for prioritizing remediation efforts, allocating resources effectively, and meeting regulatory compliance obligations. Failure to accurately assess the impact of a security incident can lead to under-resourcing critical responses, prolonged downtime, significant financial losses, and reputational damage. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the incident with the need for a systematic and accurate evaluation of its potential consequences across various business functions and systems. The correct approach involves a structured and comprehensive impact assessment that considers both technical and business implications. This includes identifying affected systems and data, quantifying potential financial losses, e.g., lost revenue, recovery costs, assessing operational disruptions, evaluating legal and regulatory implications, e.g., data breach notification requirements, and determining the potential impact on customer trust and brand reputation. This approach aligns with best practices in incident response and cybersecurity frameworks, which emphasize a risk-based methodology. By systematically evaluating these factors, the organization can make informed decisions about response priorities, escalation, and communication, thereby minimizing overall harm and ensuring compliance with relevant U.S. regulations such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for incident handling, which guide organizations on how to manage security incidents effectively. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the technical aspects of the incident without considering the broader business implications. For example, prioritizing remediation based only on the severity of the technical exploit without understanding which business operations or sensitive data are affected would be a failure. This overlooks the potential for significant business disruption or regulatory noncompliance, such as failing to meet data breach notification timelines mandated by state laws or HIPAA if protected health information is involved. Another incorrect approach is to delay the impact assessment until after initial containment efforts are complete. While containment is critical, preliminary impact assessment should begin concurrently to guide containment strategies and resource allocation. Delaying this assessment can lead to containment efforts that are misdirected or insufficient, increasing the overall impact. Furthermore, relying on anecdotal evidence or assumptions about the impact rather than a data-driven assessment is a significant ethical and professional failure, as it can lead to misallocation of resources and inadequate response, potentially violating due diligence requirements in cybersecurity. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's context. This involves gathering initial information about the nature of the incident and the systems involved. Subsequently, a systematic impact assessment should be initiated, leveraging predefined checklists and methodologies that cover technical, operational, financial, legal, and reputational domains. This assessment should be iterative, refining as more information becomes available. Collaboration between IT security, business unit leaders, legal counsel, and public relations is essential to ensure a holistic understanding of the potential impact. The findings of the impact assessment should directly inform the incident response plan, dictating the urgency, resources, and communication strategies required. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows that a comprehensive impact assessment for implementing new threat control solutions must consider the interconnectedness of technical, operational, and compliance factors. Which of the following approaches best exemplifies a professional and effective impact assessment process for these solutions? Option A. A process that focuses exclusively on the initial procurement cost of threat control solution, aiming to identify the cheapest options that meet the minimum technical specifications outlined by the security team. Option B. a process that relies solely on the recommendations of external security consultants, without independent verification or consideration of internal operational constraints and existing infrastructure. Option C, a process that involves a cross-functional team of IT security, operations, legal and business unit representatives to collaboratively analyze the potential effects of proposed threat control solutions on existing workflows, data integrity, user experience, and regulatory adherence. Option D, a process that prioritizes the selection of the most technically advanced threat control solutions, assuming that superior technology inherently leads to optimal security outcomes and operational efficiency. Correct answer is D, a process that prioritizes the selection of the most technically advanced threat control solutions, assuming that superior technology inherently leads to optimal security outcomes and operational efficiency. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing the need for robust threat control solutions with the operational realities and potential impact on business processes. The professional challenge lies in conducting an impact assessment that is both thorough and practical, ensuring that the chosen solutions effectively mitigate risks without causing undue disruption or violating compliance requirements. Careful judgment is required to identify potential blind spots and unintended consequences of implementing new security measures. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically evaluates the potential effects of implementing new threat control solutions across various organizational domains. This includes assessing technical feasibility, operational impact on existing workflows, financial implications, and crucially, compliance with relevant regulations. By engaging stakeholders from different departments, the assessment ensures a holistic understanding of the proposed changes and their ramifications. This proactive and comprehensive evaluation aligns with the principles of responsible risk management and due diligence, which are implicitly mandated by the need to implement effective threat control solutions as per industry best practices and the spirit of regulatory frameworks that aim to protect data and systems. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical efficacy without considering operational impact would be professionally unacceptable. It risks deploying solutions that are difficult to manage, hinder productivity, or are not adopted by users, rendering them ineffective. This failure to consider the human and process elements can lead to security gaps and increased operational costs, indirectly violating the intent of regulations that require effective security controls. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings above all else, potentially leading to the selection of less effective or incomplete solutions, is also professionally unsound. While budget is a consideration, compromising on essential security capabilities to meet a cost target can expose the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and regulatory penalties. This approach neglects the fundamental responsibility to protect assets and comply with security mandates. Furthermore, an approach that bypasses stakeholder consultation and relies solely on the IT security team's perspective is flawed. This can lead to solutions that are technically sound but do not address the real-world needs or constraints of other business units, resulting in poor adoption and workarounds that undermine security. This lack of collaboration can also lead to overlooking critical compliance requirements specific to certain departments. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured impact assessment framework. This framework should include defining the scope of the assessment, identifying all relevant stakeholders, mapping existing processes and systems, evaluating potential risks and benefits of proposed solutions, assessing technical and operational feasibility, analyzing financial implications, and ensuring alignment with regulatory and compliance obligations. Continuous communication and feedback loops with stakeholders are essential throughout the process to ensure buy-in and address concerns proactively. Question 18. Process analysis reveals a critical security incident involving a novel zero-day exploit that has been detected across multiple network segments. The immediate priority is to understand the potential damage and identify affected systems to formulate an effective response. Given the urgency and the unknown scope, which approach to impact assessment is most appropriate for ensuring both timely response and comprehensive understanding? Option A. Initiate a phased impact assessment, beginning with a high-level identification of critical business functions and data repositories potentially affected, followed by detailed analysis of high-priority systems, and progressively expanding the scope as more information is gathered. Option B. Immediately halt all network traffic and system operations across the entire organization to conduct a complete and exhaustive forensic analysis of every single device before any further action is taken. Option C. Prioritize a deep dive into the technical intricacies of the exploit itself, aiming for a complete understanding of its mechanisms before assessing its impact on any systems. Option D. Focus solely on containing the immediate spread of the exploit by isolating affected segments, deferring any detailed impact assessment until the threat is fully neutralized. The correct answer is A. Initiate a phased impact assessment, beginning with a high-level identification of critical business functions and data repositories potentially affected, followed by detailed analysis of high-priority systems, and progressively expanding the scope as more information is gathered. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing the need for rapid threat response with the requirement for thorough impact assessment. The professional challenge lies in determining the appropriate level of detail and scope for an impact assessment when faced with a potentially widespread and sophisticated threat. Rushing the assessment can lead to misallocation of resources, ineffective countermeasures, and potential regulatory noncompliance. Conversely, an overly protracted assessment can delay critical defensive actions, allowing the threat to propagate further. The correct approach emphasizes a phased impact assessment, starting with a broad, high-level analysis to quickly identify critical assets and potential blast radius, followed by deeper dives into specific affected systems. This aligns with best practices for incident response frameworks, which advocate for a structured and iterative approach. From a regulatory perspective, this method ensures that critical business functions and sensitive data are prioritized early, minimizing potential harm and demonstrating due diligence in protecting information assets, which is a core tenet of many data protection regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate containment without understanding the scope of impact fails to adequately inform subsequent remediation efforts. This can lead to containment measures that are either insufficient or overly disruptive, impacting business operations unnecessarily. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of comprehensive risk management. Another incorrect approach, which attempts to conduct an exhaustive, detailed impact assessment of every single system before any containment or remediation, is professionally impractical and often impossible in a fast-moving incident. This delays critical actions and can result in significant damage due to inaction, potentially violating regulatory obligations to protect data and maintain service availability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes rapid initial triage and broad impact identification, followed by iterative refinement of the assessment as more information becomes available. This involves leveraging threat intelligence, understanding the organization's critical asset inventory, and employing risk-based prioritization. The goal is to make informed decisions quickly, adapting the assessment strategy as the incident evolves. Question 19. Investigation of a sophisticated ransomware attack that has encrypted critical servers. What is the most effective initial approach to determine the full scope of the compromise and guide subsequent remediation efforts, considering the need to preserve evidence and minimize business disruption while adhering to U.S. federal and state data breach notification requirements? Option A. Prioritize the immediate isolation and wiping of all systems exhibiting any signs of compromise, followed by a rapid rebuild from trusted images, deferring detailed impact analysis until after operational recovery. Option B. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backups for all affected servers to expedite service restoration, and then conduct a post-restoration forensic analysis. Option C. Conduct a targeted forensic investigation to identify the initial entry point, understand the lateral movement, determine the extent of data exfiltration, and map all affected systems and data before initiating broad remediation or restoration activities. Option D. Rely exclusively on automated security tools to scan all network segments for indicators of compromise, and use their findings to dictate the remediation strategy without manual verification. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backups for all affected servers to expedite service restoration, and then conduct a post-restoration forensic analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the requirement for thorough impact assessment. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to overlooking critical steps that could have long-term consequences. A rushed assessment might underestimate the scope of the breach, leading to incomplete remediation, potential reinfection, or failure to meet regulatory reporting obligations. The professional challenge lies in managing stakeholder expectations, particularly from business units focused on immediate operational continuity, while adhering to established security protocols and legal mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, phased impact assessment that prioritizes understanding the full scope of the compromise before initiating widespread remediation. This aligns with best practices in incident response frameworks, such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, which emphasize containment, eradication, and recovery, but only after a clear understanding of the incident's impact. Specifically, this approach ensures that all affected systems, data, and potential exfiltration vectors are identified. This comprehensive understanding is crucial for accurate reporting to regulatory bodies, e.g., under U.S. federal breach notification laws like HIPAA for healthcare data or state-specific breach notification laws, and for developing a robust, long-term remediation strategy that prevents recurrence, demonstrates due diligence, and a commitment to data protection and privacy, which are paramount in maintaining trust and avoiding legal penalties. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately isolate and wipe all potentially affected systems without a detailed assessment. This is problematic because it can lead to the loss of critical forensic evidence needed for root cause analysis and legal proceedings. It also risks over-remediation, disrupting business operations more than necessary and potentially impacting systems that were not actually compromised. This haste can violate principles of proportionality and necessity in incident response. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on restoring critical business functions without verifying the complete eradication of the threat. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It leaves the organization vulnerable to further attacks or data exfiltration, potentially violating data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable, or U.S. privacy laws like CCPA that mandate reasonable security measures to protect personal data. It also fails to address the root cause, leading to a cycle of recurring incidents. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on automated tools for impact assessment without human oversight and validation. While automation is valuable, it can miss nuanced indicators of compromise or misinterpret complex attack vectors. This can lead to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the impact, resulting in inadequate remediation and potential noncompliance with regulatory requirements that expect a reasoned and informed response. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response methodology. This involves establishing clear roles and responsibilities, defining communication channels, and following a documented incident response plan. When faced with an incident, the decision-making process should prioritize 1. Initial triage and scoping. Quickly understand the nature and potential breadth of the incident. 2. Detailed impact assessment. Systematically identify all affected assets, data, and attack vectors. 3. Containment. Prevent further spread of the incident. 4. Eradication. Remove the threat. 5. Recovery. Restore affected systems and services. 6. Post-incident activity. Conduct lessons learned and update security measures. This methodical approach ensures that decisions are informed, proportionate, and compliant with legal and ethical obligations. Question 20. What factors determine the scope and depth of an impact assessment for implementing Cisco threat control solutions within a regulated industry? Option A. The criticality of business processes, potential financial and operational disruption, legal and regulatory obligations, and reputational damage. Option B. The number of security alerts generated by the Cisco devices, regardless of their business context. Option C. The perceived technical sophistication of the threat actors, irrespective of their actual target or impact. Option D. The immediate cost savings achievable by deploying the most basic threat control features. The correct answer is A. The criticality of business processes, potential financial and operational disruptions, legal and regulatory obligations, and reputational damage. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing the need for robust threat control solutions with the operational realities of a business. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the potential impact of a security incident without succumbing to either overcautiousness, leading to excessive costs and operational disruption, or underestimation, leaving the organization vulnerable. The complexity arises from the interconnectedness of systems, the evolving threat landscape, and the difficulty in quantifying intangible losses like reputational damage. A thorough impact assessment is crucial for prioritizing security investments and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations, which often mandate risk management and incident response planning. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach focuses on a systematic and data-driven evaluation of potential business disruptions and their consequences. This involves identifying critical business processes, understanding the dependencies between systems and data, and quantifying the potential financial, operational, legal, and reputational damage that could result from a security incident affecting those processes. This aligns with best practices in risk management and is often a de facto requirement for regulatory compliance in many jurisdictions, emphasizing a proactive and informed approach to security. By considering a broad spectrum of impacts, organizations can make more informed decisions about resource allocation and mitigation strategies, ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the identified risks. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely focus on the technical severity of a threat without considering its business context. This can lead to misallocation of resources, where minor technical vulnerabilities that have little real-world impact receive significant attention, while critical business functions remain inadequately protected. This failure to connect technical risks to business impact is a significant regulatory and ethical lapse, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting organizational assets and stakeholder interests. Another incorrect approach is to rely on anecdotal evidence or past, unrelated incidents to gauge potential impact. This is inherently unreliable and can lead to either over- or underestimation of risk. Professionally, this demonstrates a lack of rigorous methodology and a failure to adapt to the current threat landscape and the organization's specific environment. Ethically, it can result in inadequate security measures, potentially exposing the organization and its customers to harm. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings over a comprehensive impact assessment. While budget constraints are a reality, making security decisions solely based on immediate cost reduction, without understanding the potential long-term financial and operational consequences of an incident, is a critical failure. This approach disregards the principle of proportionality in risk management and can lead to significantly higher costs in the event of a breach. It also fails to meet the spirit of regulatory frameworks that expect organizations to manage risks effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach impact assessment by first identifying critical business functions and the systems that support them. This should be followed by a threat modeling exercise to understand potential attack vectors. Subsequently, the potential consequences of a successful attack on each critical function should be evaluated across financial, operational, legal, and reputational dimensions. This structured approach, often facilitated by frameworks like NIST or ISO 27001, allows for a quantifiable and justifiable assessment of risk. Decision-making should then be guided by this assessment, prioritizing mitigation efforts based on the highest potential impact and likelihood, ensuring alignment with regulatory requirements and ethical obligations to protect organizational assets and stakeholders.